Good morning. I'm here to read about Edgar Allan Poe, complete the story about diddling. Let's see, where are we here? A bowl diddle is this: a camp meeting or something similar is to be held at a certain spot which is accessible only by means of a free bridge. A diddler stations himself upon this bridge, respectively informs all passers-by of the new country law which establishes a toll of 1 cent for foot passengers, two for horses and donkeys, and so forth and so forth. Some gumble, but all submit to the diddler goes home a wealthier man by some $50 or $60 well earned. This taking toll, as a great crowd of people, is an excessively troublesome thing. The neat diddle is this: a friend holds one of his diddler's promises to pay filled up and signed to due form upon the ordinary blanks printed in red ink. The diddler purchases 2 or 2 of these blanks, and every day dips one of them in his soup, makes his dog jump for it, and finally gives it to him as a bon boucher. The note arriving at maturity, the diddler with the diddler's dog calls upon his friend and promises to pay the topic of discussion. The friend produces it from his escortier and is the act of reaching it to the diddler when he jumps the diddler's dog and devours it forthwith. The diddler is not the only surprised, but vexed and incensed at the absurd behavior of the dog, and expresses his entire readiness to cancel the obligation at any moment when the evidence of the obligation shall be forthcoming. A very minute diddle is this: a lady is insulted in the street by a diddler's accomplice. The diddler himself flies to her assistance and gives her his friend a comfortable thrashing, insists upon attending the lady to her own door. The bow, which is the hand upon his heart, and most respectfully bids her adieu, she threatens him as her deliverer, and walks in to be introduced to the big brother and her papa. As a sigh, he declines to do so. Is there no way, sir, she murmurs, in which I may be permitted to testify my gratitude? Why, yes, madame, there is. Will you be kind enough to lend me a couple of shillings? In the first excitement of the moment, the lady decides upon fainting outright. Upon second thought, however, she opens her purse strings and delivers the specie. Now this, I say, is a diddle minute, and for one entire moiety of the sum borrowed has to be paid to the gentleman who has the trouble of performing the insult, who has then to be stand still and thrashed for performing it. Rather a small but still a scientific diddle is this: the diddler approaches the bar of a tavern and demands a couple of twists of tobacco. They are handed to him when, having slightly examined them, he says, I don't make too much tobacco. I don't much like this tobacco. Here, take it back and give me a glass of brandy and water in the place. The brandy and water is furnished and imbibed, and the diddler makes his way to the door, but the voice of the tavern arrests him. I believe, sir, have forgotten to pay for your brandy and water. Pay for your brandy and water? Didn't I give you the tobacco for the brandy and water? What more would you have? But, sir, if you please, I don't remember that you paid me for the tobacco. What do you mean by that, you scoundrel? Didn't I give you back your tobacco? Isn't that your tobacco lying there? Do you expect me to pay for what I did not take? But, sir, said the publican, now rather at a loss to what to say, but, sir, but, sir, interrupted the diddler, apparently in very high dudgeon and slamming the door after him as he makes his escape. To me, no but, sir, but none of your tricks upon travelers. Here again is a very clever diddle in which the simplicity is not at least recommendation. A purse or a pocketbook being really lost, the loser inserts in one of the daily papers of a large city of a full descriptive advertisement, whereupon our diddler copies the facts of his advertisement with a change of heading, of general phraseology and address. The original, for instance, is long and verbose, is headed a pocketbook lost, and requires the treasure when found to be left at number 1 Tom Street. The copy is brief, and being headed with lost only indicates number 2 Dick and number 3 Harry Street as the locality in which the owner may be seen. Moreover, it is inserted that at least 5 or 6 of the daily papers of the day, while in point of time it makes its appearance only a few hours after the original, should it be read by the loser of the purse. He would hardly suspect it to have any reference to his own misfortune, but of course, his chances are 5-1, 5-6-1, that the fiddler will repair to the address given to the diddler rather than to the point out of the rightful proprietor. The former pays the reward, pockets the treasure, and decamps. Quite an analogous diddle is this. A lady of ton has dropped somewhere in the street a diamond ring of very unusual value. For its recovery, she offers some $40 or $50 reward, giving her an advertisement, a very minute description of the gem and its settings, and declaring that on its restoration of no such and such avenue, a reward will be paid instanter, with a single question being asked. During the lady absence from home, a day or two afterwards, a ring is heard from the door of number so-and-so in such and such avenue. A servant appears, then the lady asks for and is declared to be out, at which astounding information the visitor expresses the most poignant regret. His business is of importance and concerns the lady herself. In fact, she has the good fortune to find her diamond ring. Perhaps it would be as well as he could call again. By no means, she said, by no means. And the lady's sister and the lady's sister-in-law, who are summoned forthwith, the ring is clamorously identified, the reward is paid, and the finder is nearly thrust out of doors. The lady returns and expresses some little dissatisfaction with her sister and sister-in-law because they happen to have paid $40 or $50 for a facsimile of a diamond ring, a facsimile made out of real pinpeck and unquestionable paste. But there is really no ending to diddling, so there would be none to this essay were I even to hint at half the variations or inflections of which this science is susceptible. I must bring this paper perforce to a conclusion, and this I cannot do better than a summary notice of the very decent and rather elaborate diddle of which our own city is made the theater not so very long ago, and to which was subsequently repeated with success into other still verdant localities of the Union. The middle-aged gentleman arrives in town from parts unknown. He is remarkably precise, cautious, staid, and deliberate in his demeanor. His dress is scrupulously neat, is plain, ostentatious. He wears a white cravat, an ample waistcoat made with an eve of comfort alone, thick-soled, cozy-looking shoes, and pantaloons without stripes. He has the whole air, in fact, as your well-to-do, sober-sided, exact, and respectable man of business. Par excellence, one of the stern and outwardly hard, internally soft sort of people that we see in the crack-high comedies, fellows whose words are so many bonds and are noted with giving away guineas in charity with one hand, while in the other way, a mere bargain, they exact the uttermost fraction of a farthing with the other. He makes much ado before he can get suited with a boarding house. He dislikes children. He has been accustomed to quiet. His habits are methodical, and he would prefer getting into a private and respectable small family, piously inclined. Terms, however, are no object, only he must insist upon setting his bill on the first of every month. It is now the second, and begs his landlady, when he finally obtains one or two, is mine, but not on the account to forget his instructions upon this point, but to send in a bill and receipt precisely at 10 o'clock on the first day of the month, and under no circumstances to put it off to the second. The arrangements made, our man of business rents an office in a reputable rather than a fashionable quarters of the town. There is nothing more despised than pretense. Where there is much show, he says, there is seldom anything very solid behind, an observation which so profoundly impresses his landlady's fancy that she makes a pencil memorandum of it forthwith in her great family Bible on the broad margin of the Proverbs of Solomon. The next step is to advertise, and after such fashion, at this is the principal business of 6 pennies of the city. The pennies are eschewed and not respectable, and as demanding payment of all advertisements in the advance. The man of business holds it as a point of his faith that works should never be paid before until done. Wanted, the advertisers being about to commence extensive business operations in the city will require services of 3 or 4 intelligent and competent clerks to whom the liberal salary will be paid. The very best recommendations, not so much for capacity as for integrity, will be expected. Indeed, are the duties to be performed involve high responsibilities, a large sum of money must necessarily pass through the hands of those engaged, and it deems advisable to demand a deposit of $50 for each clerk employed. No person need apply, therefore, who is not prepared to leave this sum in the possession of the advertisers who cannot furnish the most satisfactory testimonials of morality. Young gentlemen piously inclined will be preferred. Application should be made between the hours of 10 and 11 a.m. and 4 and 5 p.m. of Messrs. Boggs, Hogs, Logs, Frogs, and Company, number 110 Dog Street. By the 31st day of the month, this advertisement is brought to the office of Messrs. Boggs, Hogs, Logs, Frogs, and Company some 15 or 20 young gentlemen piously inclined. But our man of business is in no hurry to conclude any contact with any. No man of business is ever precipitate, and it is not until the most rigid catechism in respect to the piety of each young gentleman's inclination that his services are engaged and his $50 receipted for, just by the way of proper precaution in the part of respectability, firm of Boggs, Hogs, Logs, Frogs, and Company, in the morning of the first day of the next month of the landlady does not present her bill, according to the promise, a piece of neglect for which the comfortable head of the house, ending in Oggs, would not doubt have chided her severely, could have been prevailed upon to remain in town a day or two for that purpose. As it is, the constables have had a sad time of it, running hither and thither, and all they can do is to declare the man of business most emphatically a hen knee-high, by which some persons imagine them to imply that, in fact, is a knee-eye, by which, again, the very classical phrase, non este in vetus, is supposed to be understood. In the meantime, the young gentlemen, one of all, are somewhat less piously inclined than before, which the landlady purchases a shilling's worth of the best Indian rubber, and very carefully obliterates the pencil memorandum that some fool has made in her great family Bible on the broad margin on the Proverbs of Solomon. That's the end of Diddling. And we're going to read one poem by Emily Bronte. It's a very short poem called Stanzas. I'll not weep that thou art going to leave me. There's nothing lovely here, and doubly will the dark world grieve me, while thy heart suffers there. I'll not weep because the summer's glory must always end in gloom, and follow out the happiest story. It closes with a tomb, and I am weary of the anguish increasing winter's bare, weary to watch the spirit languish through the years of dead despair. So if a tear when thou art dying should happily fall from me, it is but my soul is sighing to go and rest with thee. If anything there's truth or any like to what I'm doing here, please like and subscribe and have a wonderful day.